Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am delighted for a round 2 episode in-person podcast with Sarah Catterson. A lot of you will recognize it from episode 479, Fat Loss Coach Sarah Catterson on losing weight without restriction, dieting phases, and the power of making compromises, not sacrifices. Today's podcast, we are going to talk on a whole host of different topics, from 2024 being a challenging year, her thoughts on 75 Hard, what it's like living in Marbella, some of the things she does herself, and very busy at the minute. So we'll talk about her event, although this will be, by the time the episode goes out, the events will be done, but to stay tuned for future events. Sarah, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm buzzing to be here.
Me too. Sarah, talk to us a little bit about 2024. I know it was a challenging year, but a very rewarding one. And I think it gives us a nice little jump off point because you've been doing a lot of running, a lot of stuff with business, a lot of plates moving and juggling at once in terms of what's going on. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, 2024 was probably one of the hardest years I have had since growing my business, yet one of the best years I've had in my personal life. But it's interesting because nowadays social media, a lot of people just see the highs. So it kind of looks like you're just constantly living the high life. So I am very aware of that. I do try and show, the back end of the business as well, but people don't like to see stories of you sitting on your laptop all night, so you're not going to put that up. But yeah, it was an absolutely incredible year. It was the year that I got engaged.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much. We bought our first home in Marbella, so it feels very much more like home over there. So there's been incredible milestones that have happened for the two of us, and it's been incredible. Anto also left his 9-to-5 job and now works with myself, so we're more of a partnership in work. So it's been incredible, but alongside that, the business has very much scaled this year, which is incredible. But I suppose you're never really, well, I wasn't ready for that. I suppose when you go into a business and you start your own business, there's no real blueprint to how to manage when things are scaling. So it was the year that I hired a bigger team and got more systems in place. But before all of that, why do you hire a team? Because you're, well, for me, burnt out, overwhelmed, and slightly hit rock bottom to a point that Anto turned around and was like, if you don't get a bigger team, I'm going to have to step in here. Because I am quite a perfectionist and I just prefer to do things myself rather than ask for help. So it was a year of learning, a year of growing and actually asking for help.
Sarah, talk to us about the burned out feeling and the overwhelm. What were some of the signs? Because obviously they were very obvious to Anto. And generally when we get burnt out or overwhelmed, it's our family members, our friends, our partners that see it first. What were some of the signs he saw or you felt, or a combination of both? Just for people listening so that they can kind of tune in with some of those yellow flags that might come up.
Yeah. Some of the smaller things that may sound funny, but like, for instance, I would never be able to find my phone, my car keys, and like Anto would find them in the fridge. But the ketchup would be beside my bed. So where my phone should be, if they were swapped, it was things that kept happening like this.
I would argue that the ketchup beside the bed is actually probably more useful.
Yes,
Midnight snack, sugar rush.
Yeah. So little things like that, but just starting to get very, I would work, not really give myself any time outside of that, which affects the relationship as well. I still amn't great with giving myself time off. I won't lie on that. I don't see Saturday, Sunday as a day off, and it's something I'm really trying to work on because I say it to everyone. If you're going to constantly work, you're actually going to be less productive. So it is something that I'm definitely working on this year, but I would, rather than plan time for us on the weekend, I would plan work on the weekend. Because for me, Saturday, Sunday is a day that maybe clients aren't writing to me as much or the team isn't writing to me as much, so I can actually get more work done. Whereas that doesn't really make sense when you're trying to, work on yourself as well. Very anxious, constantly emotional because I was just feeling like I had no energy. It was then affecting my sessions. And I've spoken a good bit about this online, but my hormones were massively affected with my cortisol levels, which affected my cycle. So gratefully now my cycle is a lot more regular because I've been focusing on my cortisol levels, but for a while it was just non-existent and I was constantly on fight or flight mode. At the start of the year, I had severe acne and I couldn't understand what was going on for 6 months. It was just absolutely crippling me. But those were probably the most stressful 6 months I've had in business. This makes it sound like having a business is a bad thing. It's not at all. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's the same as having kids. It's amazing, but to say it's not stressful would be a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think because during the summer I started to work on my hormones, cortisol levels, stress management, that my acne did go away. And I do think that has a large part of just not being able to manage the stress. I think I came to a point, because I started therapy this year, that I just didn't appreciate myself enough or as much as all of my clients, because for me, I just love helping others, but I didn't know how to help myself. And I know we said we would chat about the event, but I have an event tomorrow, and it's funny, I have to do it. Well, I don't have to. I'm doing a talk at the start, but I wanted to do a little bit about my own journey. And it was the first time I've ever really wrote up about my own journey, other than a little Instagram post. And I was like, how am I going to be talking about myself for 45 minutes? Like, this is the worst thing ever. And I was writing away, and I was realizing that for so long I was just giving 90% of myself to everyone else, but just not giving it back to myself. So I have a good bit about that in the talk tomorrow. But it was nice to see the journey that I have been on, because sometimes you get stuck in a rut of, have I changed, or am I progressing? So it's nice to go back on your journey and see that you actually are making an impact on others, but it's good to help yourself as well.
How did you balance your training with that, Sarah? Because you started running a lot more, and obviously we can talk as well, kind of marathon prep in terms of the relay for Rome, for charity, but with the stress, trying to balance cortisol, balance hormones, sometimes training is a real catch-22. Training is a stressor, and sometimes the acute short-term stress can help with chronic long-term stress. But when you're in a sense of overwhelm, the psychological term is capacity, meaning that there's so much you can do, and if that cup or box overflows, the training can actually make you considerably worse. How did your training get impacted with that, and how did you bring running or deciding to do more running? Because you've historically done a lot of body composition, building your glutes, building up a really good physical physique, and then running's a bit more performance-based. Talk to us a little bit about how that looked.
Yeah. It was actually the opposite for me. A lot of people use running, running can be even worse for their cortisol levels. For me, I very much managed my food to make sure that I had enough food for the amount that I was running. But for me, starting running was just incredible for my mindset. It was where I felt couldn't go on my phone. I was a lot more creative. I would go out after a long day and completely my mind would just be free at the end of it. That's where any kind of big business decision I've made or thought of has been on my runs. And yeah, it was incredible. And it also, I felt like I was slightly more, there was a side of me that was just constantly focusing on physique, that it was really nice to change that goal, because running has a lot to do with mindset. So when I started therapy, working on my mindset, working on time for me, that like 45 minutes of a run was doing both, working on me and my mindset. So it was good to bring the two together.
One of the things that I found, and echoes kind of my journey as well with therapy and running, is you unlock stuff at therapy and then you process it on the run. You're thinking about it on the run.
Yeah.
And those two things can actually work really well hand in hand.
Yeah.
I'm curious, from a physical standpoint, how did you find the transition from body composition, which is very mirror, how I look, how I feel in clothes, how I look in terms of physical appearance, versus running, which obviously is mindset based, but it's also performance based. How did you find that transition? And the reason I ask it is because you probably experience this with clients or people that are in the app, because I have definitely as a coach, where people get borderline obsessed with the body composition side.
Yeah.
And the best thing for them is to switch towards a performance goal, because it just takes some of that pressure off and realizes there's other things you can work towards, but it's very difficult to do. What did it look like for you?
Yeah. So I started running years ago, and then I did it for a small period of time and then stopped. But when I did that, that was when I had just started my fitness journey. I was very uneducated. I was only beginning as a coach, and I had lost about 13 kg. I completely brought my fitness to a point of obsession, really low calories, and I only ran because that was a form of burning calories. So I didn't see it as performance at all. And I actually I wasn't really aware of big things like marathons. For me, doing a marathon was burning so many calories in one day. That's all I could think of it as. So this year was just incredible because for so many years have been so physique focused, and past when I was quite obsessed, even the last couple of years physique focused, but in a very healthy way, because you can be physique focused in a healthy way. So it was really nice to change the goal, but initially, my calories were brought up quite a significant amount due to how I have had hormonal imbalances in the past and cortisol levels being so risen in the past, that my food was brought up quite significantly, which I actually really enjoyed sharing that journey online, because it showed a lot of women that you potentially do need this kind of food to run. I wasn't as lean anymore while I was running, which a lot of people I think were quite shocked about, because they maybe were in that mindset that I used to be, that you would run to get lean. But for me, I was trying to explain to people that right now doing the marathon prep, it's not about what I look like. It's about having energy for my runs, which I never used to have. Having energy when I'd come back from my runs, having energy still from my sessions, and actually fueling the body. And my God, I loved every run. That's actually, sorry, I just lied to you. I did not love
I was going to say, I follow your Instagram stories. That is definitely not true. I'm glad you said it, because I was about to call you out on that.
But I loved every run for my energy wise.
Yeah.
Previous to what? But no, mindset wise, there were some runs that I just wanted to give in. But I couldn't get over the difference of my energy, which has a huge, huge impact. But back to the question of physique and how I really managed that with my mindset. There was some days that I kind of thought, I feel a bit fluffy, like my clothes aren't as comfortable as they were. But then I would remind myself that my body's about to run 42 kilometers and I'm doing it for a goal. And that how unreal is that you can change your goal, and have different goals. Like at the moment, I haven't done a dieting phase now in a good while. I'm in one at the moment. I'm not really as focused on just physique. But for me, it's that I just want to be more of a hybrid athlete and just do a little bit of everything.
I love hybrid athlete. I put up a Instagram story because I'm a hybrid athlete, like average lifter, shit runner, which is so true as a hybrid athlete in terms of the description.
Yeah.
But what I want to unpack there is the kind of the freedom from the calorie burning mindset.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people listening. Food freedom is a big focus of my content, people I work with, etc., is giving back that food freedom. But something underpinning that is the mindset of burning so many calories in one day as a marathon. Like straight away, when I think marathon, I think, fuck, right, 42K, that's quite a long distance, be able to move for that distance. When you think that's a lot of calories you're burning in one day, that kind of underpins that calorie burning mindset, that exercise is a way to burn calories, not for all these other potential benefits. Yeah. How did you get out of that? Like, what was that transition? Because there's a lot of people looking, or listening, looking, if you're watching on YouTube, the full video will be on YouTube. Go check out Pranky Fitness on YouTube. It's a shameless plug for the video podcast. But people that are listening who are struggling with that, they see exercise as a way just to burn calories. Oh, I've eaten a Mars bar, or I've eaten a Snickers, and then they'll do the guilt cardio where they'll go on the machine and literally burn off the 300 calories. It's not how calorie burning works, but that's the mindset they're in. How did you break out of that?
If anyone is listening, some things that I do tell my clients as well, especially with fitness trackers, this isn't more of a mindset thing, but especially with fitness trackers, if you're burning calories to a certain amount on your fitness tracker and then going and, saying, oh, I've eaten 400 calories, I need to burn 400 calories. Anything on a fitness tracker is completely inaccurate anyway, or on a machine. So for me personally, I don't track my calories. I only track
calories
my runs.
Burnt.
Yeah.
Calories burned. You track, because you're
sorry.
Just so people know, because you are a fan of tracking calories the correct way, but you don't track the calories burnt.
Yes, exactly. So I wouldn't turn my watch on when I'm doing a workout. I would turn it on if I'm timing a Hyrox workout or time my runs, etc., but nothing for calorie burnt. So that can sometimes alleviate a little bit of panic if people are constantly using them. Another one is that, if you're constantly focusing on calories burnt, yet you do have a physique goal, which is absolutely fine to have a physique goal. But if you do, a lot of the time, the physique you're looking for, you're never going to be able to achieve that with the amount of food you're eating and the amount of cardio you're doing. So a lot of the time you might say, I want to tone up or get a little bit leaner. But to do that, you need to have muscle mass. And to have muscle mass, we need to at least, well, you can build muscle in a deficit, but it's just much harder. So going into a maintenance phase, which is extremely underrated, and a lot more people need to be at maintenance phase. Having more energy means you're actually going to be able to put more into your sessions, build more muscle. The more muscle you have, the more changes you'll see. So I try and make it sound a little bit more sexy to my clients, because we do still come from a world of different groups, I don't know if I can say their names, that it's constantly getting on the scales and, weight loss groups.
I shit on them all the time. Don't worry about
fair,
it.
okay.
Like, I don't know how it hasn't been pulled back on me yet, but yeah.
Fair. Magazines, etc., being told that celebrities are quote unquote fat when they're absolutely not. So, we're still so accustomed to it with social media, and it's very hard, especially for young girls growing up in this world, that, we're just constantly seeing it around us. But I can't describe the moment when I stopped focusing on the number on the scales. Like, I actually look better now than I do when I was 5 to 6 kg lighter. I've more energy. I'm a better friend. I'm a better family member. I have a better relationship. Because they were all things that were massively affected when I wasn't looking after my body and my mind. But I saw far more results when I started lifting heavier in the gym. But I couldn't lift heavy when I wasn't actually fueling my body. So it's trying to see the benefits of letting go of how much calories you're going to burn.
What was your aha moment for that? So when I think of something like switching to, right, I need to eat more food, more calories. I need to fuel my workout so that I can build lean muscle tissue, which in turn will increase my metabolic rate. So I'll burn more calories while I'm resting. So I'll build lean muscle tissue and reduce body fat. That's a big shift. And it's very easy from me or you, evidence-supported, backed coaches.
Yeah.
But for when it's us living in it and it's our body, it can be a difficult thing to go from 0 to 1 with. Did you have an aha moment with that, or was it a progress and a process? Apologies. And I'm asking that question because for those listening, sometimes it's a case of you just need to hear one thing and you go, oh wow, I need to eat more, I need to lift heavier, and this is what leads to the body composition goal I want. For others, it's a trial and error. It's a 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and it's a process that takes several weeks, months, years in some cases. Yeah. What's it look like for you?
I actually haven't ever spoken about this moment, but it's funny because the lady who I'm about to speak about is coming to my event tomorrow and talking, Aisling Fox.
She's brilliant. She's been on the podcast too. She's amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And like, she probably doesn't even know this, but she changed my life. She changed my relationship with my family. She changed my relationship with Anto, because I was just so in a really, really bad headspace, which is really sad because at the time, this was only probably about three years ago. I was a really good coach. I was doing really well in business. But because, as I was kind of mentioning earlier, I look after others before I look after myself. And that had just, I was so focused on that, that I had lost so much weight from stress as well. And I just wasn't fueling myself. And I hadn't got my period back from coming off the coil. It was just wasn't coming back. My skin was getting worse. My hair was thinning. So I went and got my bloods done. She told me what bloods to get. And then I remember we actually had an Airbnb in Portugal, and I was sitting there and I got an email off her to explain that I had HA.
Hypothalamic amenorrhea.
Yeah. And that to me, like, even though I knew what it was, I remember Googling it. Even though I help clients regain their period, I Googled it. And it just, all about infertility and struggling to have kids, etc. And that was the first thing that really for me was like, I went out and told Anto. And to me, I was like, me not eating enough food, me going for runs to burn more calories, me scared of gaining some body fat is affecting him potentially in the future having a child. And that was my biggest aha moment. And that week, actually, my parents came over to Portugal to see us. And my mum actually said that she got really upset in the airport going home because she couldn't believe how much weight I had lost. But I didn't see it until about 2 months later. I came home and I was like, everything has to change. And from then I'm just a completely different person.
Your why changed completely.
Yeah.
It sounds like an aha moment for sure, if ever there was one.
Oh, every time I get my period now, I actually, I put it on Instagram. Me and Anto have a period party.
That's amazing. I love that.
Because, it's not just a period. It is a big thing when a girl has been through that. And, it affects a lot more than just, I think people think a cycle is just, you just get it. But it's a lot to do with your food, overtraining and stress.
What's, this might not be an issue now, but I'm curious. So for example, my history when I used to compete in bodybuilding shows, fitness model shows, was always the food, binge, restrict. Like I'm very, very, very disciplined to a point, and I could eat chicken, broccoli and rice for 6-12 weeks and nothing else. But then I would binge like crazy out the other side. Yeah. But I never stopped training, or over-exercising is something that's an issue, but I can scale it back. Do you have any personal check-ins, i.e. over-exercising can be a thing, under-eating can be a thing? Do you have them on even par that you check in with regularly to make sure they don't happen, or is one more potent than the other?
It's like, I have to say very gratefully, this mightn't be the answer that maybe people want to hear, because I would actually love to say, yeah, I do actually sometimes completely fall off the bandwagon, or I do know that I can be really restrictive sometimes. I'm actually, since that moment, my mindset has completely changed. That since then, I've never personally had much of an issue. Like if I, get a takeaway with Anto one evening and I overeat on calories, for me, I know overeating rather than binging, but I can just stop. And it doesn't affect me as much anymore because I don't have any restriction. And then on the other side of things, I just wouldn't get that lean anymore because it serves me no purpose. So I actually love food too much to get that lean anymore, to be quite honest.
On a similar but unrelated note, how do you find having Anto in the business? And the reason I ask that is something that I always find an interesting dynamic is partners, boyfriend, girlfriends, husband, wives, either working together, or in the case of personal trainer clients, because that happens a lot where the man or woman are in a heterosexual relationship, one of them's a coach or a trainer, and they're working with the other person. How do you find balancing and the boundaries around relationships, Sarah and Anto, versus work, Sarah and Anto?
Yeah, before we started working together, he worked 9 to 5:30, but in Spain that was 10 to 6:30. So at 6:30 every evening, or 5:30, kind of 5 o'clock, I would do this sprint that for me, like in that last hour and a half, I would absolutely hammer out work to really try and finish at 6:30 so that we could have an evening together, watch something, etc. But I was always really worried because he didn't have that cut-off time anymore, that we would both end up just working up into the night, which has happened a few times, but he won't mind me saying this, we killed each other at the start. We just had no idea what it was going to be like working together. Oh my God, we killed each other at the start. But it's been the best thing ever. It really, really has. And it's just seeing him, completely different person, going from the 9 to 5 job, being able to start up what he actually wants to do, has been incredible because he's a different person. There's nothing wrong with having a 9 to 5 job, but for him, he just wasn't himself. It was making him miserable. So it's really helped the relationship on that end. But we actually both go to therapy and we both go to the same person. And it's been incredible because we communicate.
Separately? You go separately?
Separately, yeah. I was just going to this person and then he just said, I'll go to him as well. But it's been incredible because we communicate a lot more now. And, if I'm not happy with something at work or he's not, we just communicate a lot more. So it's been amazing. But it's definitely not easy working with your partner.
No, I tell the story in Rewire Your Mindset about when I hired my mum, and I thought I was the best son ever. And it turns out I wasn't the best son ever because she hated her job. And I'm like, oh, I'm doing really well. I'll hire my mum, knight in shining armor. And then 3 months later, I was just similar to you, overworked, overstressed, overwhelmed. And you take it out on the people that are the closest to you. And I remember she came back to me and was like, actually, I'm going to go back working my insurance job. And I was like, what? And she's like, she was like, I feel like we're not getting on anymore. And I was like, oh, Brian, you're being so, like, I just had that like aha moment
Yeah.
of Jesus. Like I literally went and hired more staff after the back of that. And it was great from
Yeah.
then on. But sometimes you forget and it can, mixing church and state,
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't always work. And sometimes you need a little bit of a negative experience to wake up and go, well, actually, we need to make this work in a different way. Sounds like it was very similar there.
Yeah.
I want to bring it back on balance and training. This has been a bit more of a recent content, but I've seen it on yours, but I've also seen it's weird because of the Instagram algorithm. Like when people are talking about 75 hard or hard 75, I always get them mixed up. And it comes up that SC Catterson is like this. Talk to us a little bit about the impact of extreme approaches. And I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, I could be very wrong on this, something that's so extreme, like 75 days in a row, excessively training, etc., based on your experience of having overtrained, over-exercised, and under-dieted, it's going to hit in a different way because it's still speaking to a version of you who would have done that to burn the calories.
Yeah.
What do you tell clients or followers who come to you or ask about some extreme approach? Because the problem with extreme approaches is that they tend to work in the short term.
Oh, yeah.
If you massively restrict calories or you over-exercise and burn a load of calories, it's going to work. It just won't work over the long term. And then you get what's happened to you with a lot of cases, particularly with females, hormonal disruption, excessive cortisol, you could potentially lose your period, your cycle, all these negative impacts. How do you respond when people ask you about any extreme, whether it's hard 75 or 75 hard or any extreme approach to either nutrition or exercise? How do you handle that now in 2025 when people ask?
Yeah, when I get asked about this, and also when I put up a post recently about 75 hard, and I'm sure it probably ruffled a few feathers because it is a trend at the moment. There's a lot of people doing it. And I stand by my gun because at the end of the day, I'm not going to be the coach for everyone. But for those who want long-term results, I am the coach for them. And I personally stick to this, that I don't think anyone is starting 75 hard to build a long-term relationship with reading 10 pages of their book every day. They are doing it because they have seen others do it and completely change their body, which is absolutely incredible. If you are struggling to lose weight, it may help you at the start, but it's very rare that you are going to be able to keep that as a long-term. And if you do, like I did in the past, you potentially are going to continue that because you're terrified of gaining the weight back. So in your head, how did I lose it? I had to do 2 workouts a day of really low calories, not allowed to have any food that has any processed sugar, and also read 10 pages a day. Reading is absolutely incredible, by the way. But all of these other things, you're terrified then of gaining the weight back. So you continue to do all of this, become obsessed, and now you're going into the territory of disrupting your hormones. I don't think there's enough. If you're listening to this and you don't know about your hormones, you should. If you're a female and also male, everyone should know about hormones because they're so important. And it's not just a case of getting a period. There's so much more behind that. So if you're not too sure about your hormones, I do recommend Aisling Fox's podcast. She's absolutely incredible. But it's trying to learn that you're probably doing it for a reasoning of losing weight. And unfortunately, doing anything to an extreme, you're never going to be able to keep it long term. So you're not actually building habits with 75 hard. And building habits, yes, it may take longer. It's not as sexy. It doesn't sound as fun. But doing it over a longer period of time, you're actually going to be able to get results and then keep them.
I always think of 75 hard very similar. It's like the fitness lovers version of slimming clubs.
Yeah.
Because slimming clubs, the problem with slimming clubs, and most people who listen to this hate slimming clubs because they know they don't work over the long term, they track the wrong thing. But as fitness people, and we're both fitness people, we're coaches, we know that, well, people go back to them because they did work and then they fell off and rebounded, and they go back to the thing that worked before. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense logically when you understand that's people's rationale. Yeah. Well, I lost 2 stone when I was with Slimming World, but I put the 2 stone back on, but I want to lose it again. I'll go back to Slimming World. Yeah. That makes a lot of logical sense. 75 hard is like a fitness version of that. It's somebody who likes training, who likes exercise, but it's the same thing because the risk is you can go back. And me and Dan, who's in Primal Studio, I was on his podcast, we were speaking about this. You can use it as a test and as like a reset. Like if you're someone that's like, do you know what? I just need something that's a bit challenging, like, you know, pot kettle. Like I've done some seriously extreme challenges. Sometimes you just need something extreme to see, well, what can I do? How far can I push this?
Yeah.
So how you're coming into this matters greatly. So if you're listening to this podcast and you want to challenge yourself and hit a reset, yeah, by all means, play around with it. Go do a marathon, go do 75 hard, do whatever you want to do. It's your choice, but be mindful that you're doing it for this reason, not because I need to lose weight. And then that becomes your go-to for, you know, I need to go do twice a day workouts again and I need to cut out all processed sugar and that's the way I lose weight. When in reality, there's way more sustainable methods. It's like, I always think of the ketogenic diet and 75 hard is similar. It's like trying to hang a picture on the wall with a sledgehammer. Like that's the wrong tool for the job.
Yeah.
Like it'll do it, it'll hang it, but like you'd have been way better off with a normal size hammer. 75 hard for weight loss, extreme methods for non-extreme results or non-extreme goals don't merge together.
Yeah.
If you want to run an ultramarathon and become a professional athlete or a IFBB bikini competitor or a bodybuilder, yeah, you need to do some extremes. It's an extreme goal. Extreme paths lead to extreme goals. If you're just trying to lose weight, control your calories, nutrient-dense food, move more, etc. You mentioned reading there, the 10 pages of a book, and I'm going to ask about therapy as well because I want to see something that's positively impacted you in your life. You mentioned reading. I know you're a big reader as well. I've got two questions and we can kind of go in either direction with it because they might be overlapped. One is in terms of a book that's positively impacted you more recently. And on top of that, I want to ask about habits and something that's non-exercise related that you do that's really helpful for you. And I'm not sure if reading falls into that category or if it overlaps, but talk to us a little bit about any book that comes to mind that's impacted you positively recently. And then we'll get on to habits, a non-exercise related one that you do every day that helps you.
Yeah, I'm actually just going to put a little bit in here just in case people are listening to this and they're like, she is so anti-diet. She is so against all of this.
You're definitely not, by the way.
I'm absolutely not.
Yeah,
so I'm currently in a dieting phase. I'm currently doing my first 2 high roxes in the next couple of months. I did a marathon challenge myself last year. I want to do a lot more challenging things. For me, I've just tried to change my challenges to things that are really challenging my mind, my body, and making it more than just looking lean. But why am I dieting at the moment? Because I want to get a little bit leaner. So I am not shitting on dieting by any means at all. And someone else, maybe a coach will listen to this and say, she just doesn't agree with 75 hard because she has had a poor relationship with food in the past. But that's again, not my reasoning. I just would hate anyone to do it and then fall into a path of binge restrict, fall into anything. So if you are going to do 75, there's nothing wrong with it. Just make sure you look after your mindset after. And there's also things like 75 soft that you do 1 workout a day and maybe that can be a walk. So it's a normal amount of workouts. But yeah, I very much challenge myself to points that a lot of people probably think are crazy. So I'm not against that. But in terms of books, so I probably have put a front on maybe on Instagram because I've really only started reading in the last 3 weeks.
I feel like I've seen a lot of book stuff up on your Instagram.
Yeah, I'm really trying at the moment. Because again, that was something that I always loved doing, but wouldn't allow myself the 20 minutes in the morning because I should be doing 20 minutes of emails instead. So that's something that I've really got into now. And the David Goggins book that I'm reading at the moment.
First one or the second one?
The first one. Yeah. Oh, it's just absolutely incredible. So me and Anto did the Goggins challenge last March.
Can you explain what that is for people that are familiar?
So it's running every 4 hours, running 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So you would run and then let's say it would take 40 minutes and then within the 4 hours then you'd have to go. So we were running throughout the night. You're running on no sleep. It's very hard to fit in as much food. You're just ramming food down and it was just absolutely torturous for the mindset, but that's the whole point of it.
That's the idea.
But we raised €14,000 for mental health. So that was incredible. That was our whole point behind it. So we did that and just reading the book was amazing. If you're ever kind of going through a point of not feeling too confident in, if it's in business, if it's in a decision that you want to do, if you don't know what you want to do in your life and you just feel like you need a bit of a boost, a push, sometimes what you don't want to hear, because it is tough wording, and you do kind of read it and you think, how has he even been allowed to put that in there? But sometimes you just need to hear that, and I like that kind of tough mentality. I think it's, you either get it done or you don't, and I have to say his books are incredible.
Yeah, I always think of David Goggins, and I'm a big fan as a tool that when you need that tough love. Now I'm a tool and toolkit. Sometimes you need to be very self-compassionate with yourself, and other times you need to have tough love.
Yeah.
But feeding up and filling up that cup with David Goggins is really useful. Like when I'm training for ultras or any adventure races or anything that's extreme, Goggins is normally in my ear, because I need somebody just shouting at me saying, just come on, just get it done. Where there's times and periods when I'm not doing that, or I can't listen to it at all, because it's just,
100%.
It's the tool for the right job at the time. But I think he's fantastic in terms of what he does. And I'm a big fan of both his books. Can't Hurt Me and Never Finish is very good. When it comes to habits then, what's one that you do each day that's non-exercise related that helps you a lot? Because obviously you're very high energy with your work, with your output, with training. You're balancing a lot of things with relationships with Banto, etc. You're obviously living in Marbella, so you're away. Yeah. What's something that you do every day that's non-exercise related that actually helps you quite a lot? Actually, let me refocus that. Because you do so much that's head driven, that can be very type A, high anxiety, quite head driven thought processes. What's something you do that's not running that helps calm that down?
We have a movie night every night. So we have, when we were actually buying furniture for our house, we wouldn't get a normal couch. We only get a pull-out couch as a bed. We don't use that as a bed, but every single night we pull it out, we put duvets on it, we make it into a big movie night. We watch something. It might just be an episode of Hell's Kitchen because we just love Gordon Ramsay, but it's just, that's an hour of, we're not allowed to speak about work. We're not allowed to talk about the day that's happened work-wise, and we make our dinner together, we sit down, we watch it, and that completely calms me down, because it feels like a Friday night every night. And it has something about it that makes me feel like, oh, we had a really good day, even if something didn't go to plan. So yeah, we have our little movie night, and that really helps. I
love that. Are you familiar with the peak end rule? In terms of experiences, when we relate on things, we tend to remember the peak moment of experience and then the end. Yeah. So I feel like when you anchor your day with something like that at the end, it tends to kind of work as a little mini reset for, okay, this was actually a pretty good day, because you remember what happened at the end of it. So I like that you're kind of hijacking the peak end rule and making it a daily experience versus something that happens every week on a Friday night.
Yeah. And even with my clients, when they say, oh, I really want to have chocolate, but I'm not allowed because I'm dieting. And I'll always say to them, you're more than welcome to have chocolate. I have chocolate every single night. Why don't you fit it in the evening? And you kind of look forward to it then throughout the day, thinking, oh, I still have that there. So I see that as my movie night. If, if work's a little bit tougher, or if I'm not having the best day, I feel like that's all I've said on this podcast. I really love work. And I really do. But it's just the context of the podcast. But if the day is harder, I'm always like, I can't wait now for our movie night. Or sometimes we'll wake up and be like, can't wait to pull out the couch. And it just gets us excited.
I think everybody needs that. I can't talk because I have that with my morning workouts. Like literally, I'll get excited when I'm following a training phase and I'm enjoying. I'll get excited at 6 or 7 p.m. knowing that I'm getting up in the morning to go train, and so I can't talk. Like it's so relative on what it is that pulls you in and gets you excited. But I think everybody needs a reason to kind of jump out of bed every morning, or go into bed happy. Whatever that looks like. And again, that's a range of extremes that people will have, from people that are in relationships to solo to single to what you're into in terms of movies, TV shows, etc. But I think it's really important to build it in.
Just something you said there is really important, that you get excited for your workouts. And this brings us back to what we were talking about changing your goal from physique goal to a performance goal. I can't recommend it enough to start logging your workouts and getting excited. The nights before my RDLs, I can barely sleep because I'm so excited, and I'm nervous because I want to get a heavier weight. Who gets excited to get on the scales the next morning and take their photos? Not many people. So trying to fall in love with what you're doing, whether it's karate and you want to get, a higher standard or whatever it is, it doesn't have to just be a number in the gym, but trying to focus on performance rather than the scales actually gets you excited for what you're about to do.
I agree completely. I think that even balancing it, even if you have a body composition based goal, having a performance element in there, it just switches the focus. Like if it's split attention, I know when people will say you should put all your eggs in one basket and focus on the basket, but split attention for goals takes some of the pressure off, because if you step on a scale and the weight's gone up, or you look in the mirror and go, well, I feel a bit fluffy today or a bit flat or whatever. But you're like, but I smashed my RDLs or I smashed my speed on the treadmill or on the rower. Like, you're feeling good then because you're focusing on that. So it's giving that little bit of fitness freedom versus food freedom. I want to pull it back to the food because it ties in really well. I was going to ask about broken thinking, and that got me unpacking in my head in real time around training, that you should be excited to train. Like, one of the things I talk about when I'm working with clients, particularly one-to-one, is I have a love and a hates list, particularly for a phase 2 of a program. I'm like, tell me everything in the program that you love to do and everything in the program that you hate that you're doing, or programs before that you loved and that you hated, and then you overlap it with the goal of the individual, because that leads to sustainability for most people because they enjoy it and they look forward to those workouts. With food, something you mentioned there was the chocolate. I quote unquote can't have the chocolate. I'm trying to lose weight. I can't have the chocolate, or I can't have X food because I want to lose weight or reduce body fat. I think that's very broken thinking is what the language I use. Like, it's miseducation, particularly with a weight loss goal, because you control for your calories and balance out hormones, your sleep, your nutrition, your metabolic rate for exercise. All of those things impact it. So chocolate can definitely be factored in there. Yes, you're probably not going to have 10 chocolate bars and 2,000 calories worth, but a bar or two is probably going to be fine if it's fitting into your calories. With nutrition, what's the most common broken thinking you see? Is it specifically, I can't have X, or is there something layered above that or underneath that you see regularly with clients in particular and people in the app?
I think it's just not as educated around food. So there's a lot of noise online now as well of the keto diet. Well, there has been around for years. Or there's a case of, really low calories and not having carbs. So I think these all stem from childhood. It can stem from all of these things. But a lot of the time I do see clients coming in and it's a case of just quite shocked that they can have these foods. Now, some clients we actually get coming in that, will, let's say they're on 2,000 calories, but they don't understand, which is a flip side of it, the importance of nutrients and whole foods. So it's a case of I'm having 2,000 calories. I'm doing exactly what I'm meant to do, but it's all processed food. And yes, of course, you can still lose weight by doing that. But are you going to look as good as you want to look? No. Are you going to build the muscle? But also, are you going to feel as good? No. Are you going to have as much energy? No. So there's that side of it as well. But I just have a massive, my ethos and value for clients is really trying to educate ladies that you don't have to restrict certain foods. You don't have to see foods good and bad. You don't have to cut out certain food groups, because they all have a place. They're all important. But, there is highly processed carbs. There is more complex carbs. And it's just going to be what's better for your training. Some people shit the bed when they see that I have a squares bar before the gym. Like, this is so processed. I get that all the time on my, when I do what I eat to try and show women about fueling, especially around the marathon. People couldn't believe that I was having honey and a squares bar and cereal around doing a marathon. It was just, your food's so processed, yet I was still having all my whole foods around it. So I'm a very 80-20 approach around food. And that does come because I spent so many years cutting out food that I just will never do that again.
With 80-20 as a preference, and I agree completely, I think it's that nice little balance in terms of 80% nutrient whole foods and then 20% of your favorite foods. How do you handle pushbacks on that? So somebody, and it's keeping a theme of the podcast with the extremity, the ironic thing, and you probably see this all the time, and I see it quite a lot, and I've been doing this for over a decade now, so I've seen probably every variation of this, where somebody who wants to lose weight, 2 stone, 3 stone, 10 pounds, 20 pounds, whatever it is, you'll say, right, you can factor in your chocolate bar per day, you can control your calories, etc. But they come back with, well, if I just cut that out, I'll get better results faster, which technically is true. But it normally leads to people not adhering or binging or falling off plan. What's your professional approach for those who have pushed back on this 80-20 approach? Because intuitively, most of us know 80-20 is going to be sustainable for a lot of people, particularly with a weight loss goal. But yet there's some who are like, well, if I just do 95-5 or 100-0, I'm going to get results faster. What's your professional approach or wording or feedback for getting people in alignment with that 80-20, that this is actually what's going to work over the long term? How do you handle that?
There's actually a story that I always use for clients, and I always explain it when I'm doing my videos for clients, is the kid at a birthday party. So I remember this in my school, but whenever I do say, a lot of women say that they had that person in school as well, that their parents never allowed them chocolate and sweets when they were kids. And that kid was always the kid that didn't socialize at parties, that they were just standing at the table hammering into chocolate and sweets because there was a fear of, when will I get this again? And that can happen even in our later life of, okay, well, if I restrict for a certain period of time, when I do get that food, all of our control completely goes out of the window, because you don't have that feeling of, okay, you know, I've had my chocolate, I've enjoyed it, I'm going to have it tomorrow, so I don't need to go overboard. You think, okay, I haven't had this for a period of time, now I'm having it, but when I start my diet again, I'm not allowed it, so I'm going to have as much as I physically can now. And that, unfortunately, then can actually make women, cause them to gain the weight, but also more back. And when I do tell clients that they potentially could gain the weight back and more if they're not. Now, they don't have to have chocolate, but this could be not allowing peanut butter. This could be not allowing a certain food. And often that certain food is going to cause you to go overboard in the future. So it's trying to see, where can I bring that in? And often food pairing is very beneficial. So I will say, okay, well, if it's chocolate that you go overboard on, I actually want you to get, you know, the small, not a share bar, the small little bars that you can get, and have that with a bowl of 0% Greek yogurt and loads of volume with fruit and berries. So you're having protein and you're having your bit of chocolate, you're also having volume. So you're pairing it rather than just having a small little chocolate bar, not even going to touch the sides, and then you're going to want a lot more. That's
a really good way around it. I love that. In terms of like bulking up the meal with the favorite food. Yeah, that's a really good workaround for people. And I remember that story and everyone thinks of the person, because every birthday party you were ever at, there was always the kid who was literally like a heroin fiend with the sugar, and just would like literally like be in a food coma by the end of the party just because they'd just pounded so much sugar and chocolate. I totally get that. I had a friend that wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons or cartoons in their house, so every time he'd go to the house, he would just plant himself like a zombie in front of the TV, and you wouldn't see him at all at the party. He'd be just glued to it. So it shows whatever you remove and pull away, you're going to sometimes have a workaround for it. But also it's the purple polar bear theory, or it's not called the purple, I call it the purple polar bear and Rewire Your Mindset. It's called the pink elephant theory, that you tell someone don't think about a pink elephant, and all they can think about is a pink elephant. And that's the same with the food. Tell someone they can't have a specific food, and all they want generally is that food, particularly if it's an emotional attachment to a food that they love. So be very mindful of that. And again, even just keeping those foods on plan. And if you choose not to eat them, that's a big difference from no chocolate for you. Can't have the biscuits, can't have the peanut butter, etc. Go on.
With sometimes clients will say, I'm giving up alcohol. That's different. So that has a lot of positive effects.
On everything.
So that is one. But, I had something there that just came to mind. Not food pairing. I already said that. Oh yeah, sorry. Changing your environment is one that is really beneficial. So I actually have a video of this on Instagram, and I think people might think, God, that's very obsessive now, the way she's put that up. But the amount of people it's helped. So often we associate a certain type of food with our environment. So let's say that movie night that I say with Ando, let's say I said I have biscuits every single night when I do that. And if I had a poor relationship with food and just completely binge all the time with biscuits, I associate that with that area. So if you're someone that sits down in the evening and you have a certain thing that you eat all the time on the couch and you have no control over, try and bring that somewhere else. So one of my clients, she really struggled with biscuits. So I told her, okay, instead of completely cutting it out, because when you do get biscuits, she said she could finish a full packet of biscuits when she does buy them. So just not buying them isn't really helping, because then when she does get them in the future, she's never learned anything. So I told her she had to go and buy the biscuits and buy sandwich bags. So she had to bring 2 biscuits with her to work and have them on the way home from work in the car. So she was completely changing her environment. And then she fit in something different in the environment where she would have had biscuits. So every night she'd have the yogurt and fruit or whatever, but she was still having biscuits every single day, but they were portioned. She couldn't go back for more because it was outside of the house. And it does sound like a lot, But we did this for 6 months, and now she can have biscuits in her house, doesn't bother, and she couldn't be bothered because she knows she has them every single day.
There's a fascinating story. I think it's in Johann Harvey's Lost Connections. It's possibly in one of Stephen Kotler's book about the importance of environment. Have you seen this with the Vietnamese veterans from the US who were addicted to heroin?
No.
So the study goes through so there was a portion of the Vietnamese soldiers addicted to heroin off the back of the Vietnam War, and a portion of them that came back, because the general consensus was heroin is the most addictive drug on the planet up until this point when the study was done, that if you did it in Vietnam, it didn't matter where you were going to want to do it living in the US. And a lot of them that came back, there was a portion, I think it was 60 to 70%, I might be misquoting, that never touched heroin again when they came back, because the different environment. And there was an argument, it was a kind of a split research on the connection for those who came back to family and friends, but the environment, they didn't associate their home environment with the drug, and they weren't craving it versus when they were in Vietnam. Really interesting study. I might be misquoting which book it's from, but it's a very well researched study around environment and the importance of like drug behaviors, which again is probably an extreme example, but food plays a role in that we associate certain things with specific places and specific things that we're doing. And sometimes you need to have a pattern interrupt on a habit, i.e., the movie night with the biscuits, where you're changing your relationship with the food and then potentially bringing it back in. They're all tools in your arsenal so that you've got more food freedom and a better food relationship. Sarah, I want to ask one final area and cover one final topic before we wrap up. And for those that are listening, I'll link everything in the show notes, our previous episode, the SSE app, the Instagram page, all the good stuff that people can follow on. But I want to talk about therapy. And I'm a big fan of therapy. Therapy is for your mind what lifting weights is for your body in terms of the benefit that it can have from, in my opinion, focus group of one here. But what's something that therapy has taught you in the past few months that you're regularly checking in with now? For example, when I started therapy, I was very closed off to the thought of like inner child work. I was like, that's fucking horse shit. Like, don't need that. Like, what are you talking about? And I was very, very, didn't want to touch it and wasn't even open to the idea, not realizing that actually it was my resistance to it was, it's the Carl Jung quote, what you most need is where you least want to look. And then when I started to lean into it, I was like, actually, there's so much value here. And it's something that I check in with regularly in terms of like, right, I'm having a hysterical reaction to something here now. If it's hysterical, it's historical, checking in with that and not letting it, something that's happened when I was 7 or 14, impact how I am in relationship or run my business or how I am as a father when I'm 37. So checking in with that, therapy taught me a lot with that. Do you have any tool that you're using regularly that therapy has taught you that you think would be beneficial for people listening?
Yeah, one thing for me is that I can be quite reactive very quickly. So if I, see, when I used to see like a comment on Instagram and it would be about like, I don't know, I get them all the time, my voice or my face, whatever it is, I would be quite reactive and I would straight away comment back. Whereas I could see hundreds of lovely messages all the time coming in on posts, and I would read through them but maybe not be able to get back to them all. Yet I should be giving a lot more time to the people who are giving me their love and energy than those people. And I now feel sorry for those kind of people, but before it was I couldn't understand why there was nasty people out there in the world. So for me now, I take time and I reply in my notes. And for me, that's replying, but I don't actually send it to anyone. Another one for me is I can be quite hot-headed, and I don't take time to kind of rationalize anything. And as you said earlier, that we can often take it out on people around us. So, poor Anta would sometimes get the little panics and outblasts. Whereas now I'll just go into him and be like, I'm actually having a really bad day, or I'm having, something's just happened and I'm trying to figure out how to go about this. So if I'm quiet for the next hour, that's why. And he's like, perfect, you know where I am if you need me. Whereas before I wouldn't say anything. I'd trash around the kitchen and I'd, loudly put my mug down to kind of make a statement that I'm in a bad mood. Whereas now, if it's something between us, I'll say, oh, do you mind if we can sit down and talk about it? And now because he's doing therapy, it's so funny because we go to the same person, if we both get pissed off, I'll be like, I'm telling Dan. And he's like, well, I'm going to tell Dan. But it's brilliant. It's fantastic. It really is. And I suppose it makes you very vulnerable as well, because like that, I had things from childhood that I never knew was ever going to come up. And they come up when you're going through your why and why maybe something has stuck with you. And a lot of things people have said to me over the years has completely stuck with me, that I'll get in rut of, oh, I'm a failure, I'm not doing enough. I compare myself to people massively. So that's been a huge journey this year. And it's, at the end of the day, no one's perfect, but it's just trying to find what works for you. But just talking to someone has been incredible.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. And I think similar to a coach showing you how to eat, how to exercise, how to manage that, therapists, psychologists can do the same, but just how you're navigating yourself in the world. Like I'm a massive fan. And I think even for that, to put a gap between the stimulus and reaction, I think it's Viktor Frankl talks about that gap between the stimulus and reaction in Man's Search for Meaning, that most of the time it's not the thing that bothers us, it's our reaction to it, and then it's trying to pick up the pieces. It's the analogy I use in books is like when you throw down a cup and it breaks into a million pieces, you can say sorry, but it doesn't unbreak the cup. Like it's been said, when if you can create a little bit of space between your reactions to things, whether it's anger or sadness or just a comment or a word or replying to a DM in your case or replying to a public comment in your case, it's just taking that breath and also realizing its perspective. Most of the stuff that we see is our lens, our bias of the world, our experiences up to this point. I've lived a life of 37 years. You've lived a life of, how old are you now? 28. Yes, 28 years. Still super young. But they've been totally different lives that we've lived. So I have my biases, my experiences, you have yours, and we put that lens on the world. And there's a false consensus bias where we assume that because we think a certain way, so does everybody else. And when you start to do therapy and pull that out and realize that everything is the way you're choosing to see it and it's perspective based on your opinion, it makes it a lot easier, and also makes it easier to deal with the negativity and the comments, because you feel bad for the people, because when you have shit in you, hurt people. You're projecting that onto other people. When you're feeling really good about yourself, the last thing you want to do is sling shit at somebody. You're like, good job, well done, keep going. And that's a good check-in, because I know myself, if I ever get days where I'm like, oh, who do they think they are? Which happens sometimes. I'm like, I need to turn this inwards. This is on me. I'm not focusing on my stuff, because the majority of the time it's like, keep going. You do you. I think if I got €1 for every time I said that, you'd have lots of euros based on that. And it's just a good way to go through life. Sarah, I'm so glad we got to do this round 2 in person. We did the first one online, very popular episode. I'm sure this one will be exactly the same. I've mentioned the app, the SAC app, the Instagram page. People can check out. The podcast is there, but might be some updated episodes based on the new event. But where is the best place for people to find out more about you? Obviously, there's the website as well, which I'll link. Is it Instagram still, the app, website, or a combination of all three? Yeah, the Instagram is where I really show up every day. TikTok, I dabble. I do try to get better at that. I don't know why I feel like a dinosaur on it. But Instagram is where you'll find everything. And then also on my Instagram has the Team SEC one, which has all the app and the challenges on it as well. Amazing. I'll link those in the description for everyone to check out. Go check out the Instagram page if you're not already, and go check out the app on the website off the back of this podcast. Sarah, keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much again. Thank you so much, Brian.